Hello and welcome to the Fifth Line 5R show, part of the Five Reasons Sports Network. I'm Alex Baumgartner, joined by my co-host Colby Guy. So the first episode of the Fifth Line 5R show, and what a perfect time to start, as today was the first day of Florida Panthers 2023-2024 training camp, officially getting the same exact campaign going of the 2023-2024 season. Welcome to the show, guys. Colby, you were at camp today as well as I was. Obviously, a lot of buzz in the building. The Panthers' first time on the ice formally since Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals, which was just about 100 days ago, maybe even a little bit less than that. The team was obviously going to talk a little bit about what happened, but the whole focus was on what's ahead. So, first impressions of day one of camp.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the Stanley Cup final, everyone was ready to move on there and get back to doing what it takes to get to the Stanley Cup final. And that's go through a really hard camp. I mean, Paul Maurice had the guys going through one on one battles. He had them doing lap after lap after lap. And it seemed like everyone was up to par just like they were last season. And everyone's bought into it. The new guys really feel like they're getting their legs under them too, and they understand what it takes to be in a team that can win like that. And yeah, things are off to a good start.
Yeah, so this is year two of the Paul Maurice regime in South Florida. Last year was not the smoothest of sailing up until pretty much the end of the regular season, where there was about 25 games to go, and the Panthers were going on up and down runs even at that point, but just snuck into the playoffs, made the postseason, and then obviously went into the Stanley Cup final. It did take the Panthers maybe up to the halfway point of the season, I think around January, to really catch on to what they were buying into in the system. Last year, Paul said that they were trying to do a little bit of the system previously and his system, and they just wouldn't work. So they had to switch entirely to one type of hockey. And once they bought into that, well, that's when the success started happening. Now the players are very familiar with that system. They know that it works. They know that his system is suited for playoff hockey. So now you have a full year of that system behind you, and you're moving into year two of it, knowing that you can compete with anybody in the NHL. So, yes, very confident, very hungry after being disappointed in the Stanley Cup final, but also very hopeful and excited for the opportunity ahead of them with a very similar looking team, except there are a couple upgrades and a couple new faces with not a lot of departures. We talked to a couple of them over the last 2 days. Oliver Ekman Larson on the back end, very experienced, long tenured NHL defenseman and former captain. Evan Rodriguez flies under the radar a lot in the NHL, but he was really good on Pittsburgh, really good on Colorado. And now he's playing with another superstar player in Alexander Barkov, as he did with Crosby and McKinnon the last 2 years. There's a lot of up and down movement in the lineup, but I think personally that they added a lot more depth to this team.
Yeah, and they needed to add a lot more depth on the back end because they're going to be without Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, who are still dealing with some injuries that they were playing through in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And to factor with that, they brought in 4 defensemen to fill in those 4 spots that are remaining. But it adds an interesting dynamic because those 4 guys are going to be competing for 2 spots once things whittle down here and you get your 2 guys back. And there are a lot of interesting options here. Like Mike Riley, he's coming off a season where he was buried in the minors for a little bit, but he plays a style of game that really fits with what Florida does with their defensemen jumping into the attack. You have Nico Mikkola coming in, one of the only guys they did bring in on a multi-year deal, who is really a strong skater for a 6'4"
You look
frame.
you look
Really
very
good
into sports
defensively, and he
takes.
won a ton of one-on-one battles during training camp today. He was one of the better performers, but you have that group of guys coming in there and trying to compete for those spots. It's gonna breed a lot of competitiveness, and it'll bring some depth as well.
They I want to touch on Mikola, and we can kind of put in a couple other guys that they brought in too. I thought Mikola was really good today. He looks I mean, just the physical stature of the guy. He's scary to go in the corner. There was one-on-one drills that Maurice does during these split group sessions. Second round pick, Florida's first pick this year, Grayson Sachin, was in the corner with Mikkola. Mikkola gave him a little shot, not a dirty shot, but like, good contact in the boards. And I think Grayson Sachin might be like 5'10", and Mikkola looks 6'5" plus on skates. So you can definitely see the size. The Panthers did lose Radko Gudas, who was not a big guy in terms of size and height, but he plays like he was 6'6". So they're going to be hoping that Mikkola can jump in and play a similar type of role to where he brings the physicality. And when you're that big, you're going to be scary on the ice. And he moved pretty well. He looked good in the one-on-ones against Matthew Tkachuk. I know you pointed this out on Twitter that he was doing a lot of one-on-ones against Matthew Tkachuk. So you like when you see guys test themselves against the best players on the team in the league. I like Mikkola. They also got bigger with Kevin Stenlund, another 6'5" guy. He's really big on the ice. Alex True. Panthers added some size. That's a big thing that they went after. And I think that's in large part to seeing how Vegas was really good with their big guys too, and that back end in Vegas. I like that blueprint. What do you have to think about say about that, Colby?
I mean, back to Mikkola for a second. I mean, not only did he take on Matthew Tkachuk, but he like visibly frustrated both Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Reinhart there. He won battle after battle, and I mean, you could tell at the body language from those two guys after they went after Mikkola that he is a tough guy to play against, and that's something that Zito has heard from some other big stars in the NHL. As he said on July 1st that this is a guy that star players don't like playing against. He's a big guy, long reach, pretty physical, that's able to keep up with all these guys. So he could prove to be a very usable asset on that blue line. And I mean, to your point with the forward acquisitions as well, one of the biggest departments that Florida lacked in when it came to playing the Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup final was that Vegas's fourth line was just much better than theirs. They had a line that checked pretty hard and did all the things that Florida likes from its first two lines. Good forecheck, wins those battles in the corner, screens the goaltender, and they completely outclassed Florida's fourth line during that Stanley Cup final. And now you have guys like Kevin Stenlund and Steven Lorentz, who are big physical guys who can kind of play that style of game that Florida wants to see from its bottom six guys. So they definitely did a good job in addressing some of those issues, but it should be interesting to see who does step up to help them stay above water while Ekblad and Montour are out. And I mean, as we were talking about earlier, Mikkola is an early favorite to be one of those guys.
OG Panther comes back after a while not being in Florida. Dmitry Kulikov, he looked good. I thought Kulikov looked really good in the. They did these one-on-one drills like we were talking about with Mikkola for the other group as well. And for the times that I was watching the prospects more and the bubble guys, the guys wearing blue, most of the pro roster guys are wearing white. Now they do split it up a little bit. Like some guys that will be on the team were rocking with the blue group in the split session. But I really like Kulikov. I thought he was playing the gap really well. You could see the veteran type of player he was, staying really close on the gap, frustrating some guys. That's another guy that Panthers fans were really excited to get back on a cheap deal. He returns to South Florida. He said he's been thinking about coming back to South Florida, and the reunion is here. And we haven't talked to him yet, but Kulikov's another guy that just adding the pieces on the back end. And you bring back Casey Fitzgerald, who was with the team the whole year, didn't play a lot, but was with the team. Lucas Carlson was spectacular in the AHL. Matt Kierstead always looks good in camp. So there are missing guys with the Ekblad and the Montours that won't be here till around December at the earliest, unless something changes. But the depth on the blue line has been increased, as we talked about.
Yeah, I do want to add that Carlson was probably one of the better guys out of that first group. Like he looked like he was far and away the best guy in that younger guy group, and he every time he had one of those one-on-one battles, within 2 seconds, he'd be able to find a way to get the puck off. He has pretty good edge work, and he had a really good stick and frustrated some guys in that rookie group too. So he looked dominant as far as beating those rookies.
I think the biggest thing that you notice at these 59-man camps with no cuts right away is the skill level differential and the skill gap between a guy that's consistently playing minutes in the NHL compared to someone that was probably really good in junior or decent in the AHL, and now you're going up against guys that, well, I mean, Panthers have been good the last couple of years. You kind of see in the drills where these pro defensemen are playing these one-on-one open ice battles where it's kind of simulating a board battle so tightly because they're not scared of the guy getting loose on a break. Whereas I don't want to call anyone out, but you see some of these younger guys that haven't been, in the NHL or even the AHL. I thought Evan Noss could kind of tell that he was getting beat because he was playing the gap on those one-on-one drills a little bit too far back. Now, he was sticking with the guys in terms of speed sometimes, but you kind of see, and with the forwards the same way, if they get out-muscled by the NHL guys or the AHL guys. So I think that's another interesting part in camp where you can clearly see the differential in development between someone that might be 18, 19 years old and someone that's 30, 29, 28 and plays top minutes in the NHL.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not really quick to overreact with Lucas Carlson, because I need to see him do some of these things against these NHL guys. But I mean, it clearly shows that he's a guy that at least belongs in the conversation to be on the team versus a guy that should be in the minors. And I mean, a guy that had 50, 60 points in the AHL last year as a defenseman, I think he proved that pretty much last season already. But if this is a guy that doesn't make the Panthers main roster and he's a guy that they have to waive, then some other team might claim him and be pretty happy.
I know he's on a two-way contract, but is he waiver exempt or is he not?
No, he's not. He played too many games, so he can go through waivers.
So we talked a lot about some of the new guys. Let's get back into the old guys. Sam Bennett, he was good, 100%. He said Matthew Tkachuk, 100%. He said, some of these they both picked up injuries throughout that run, and it's good to see them back. Obviously, Montour and Ekblad weren't skating with the main groups, but they were on the ice between practice sessions, skating with the injured guys and Patrick Hornqvist, who is now working in a front office role. So there was a little bit of worry from people outside saying, "Oh, is Tkachuk going to be back? Is Bennett going to be back?" Well, they're going full speed today.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing with Hornquist there is that he was a really good addition to the front office and to the staff there. And I mean, watching back with him and Anthony Duclair last year, he clearly made a difference in Duclair's recovery and ramping him up to speed to get him back to be able to be a part of that playoff run, that stretch run there. So Hornquist is a very welcome addition to the Panthers training staff there. But yeah, I mean, looking back to breakdown day, it definitely seemed like the only two that they had to worry about were Ekblad and Montour. So all the outside stuff was just noise, and they recovered. They're fully recovered, and they're ready to go. But the one thing Florida does have to worry about right now is that Carter Verhaeghe did leave training camp with some tightness that Paul Maurice said, and he said he was just taken out because for a due to precaution there, but you have to see if he's there, see how he's doing, and tightness could mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, don't want to look too much into things without a medical report. He got off on his own weight. Paul's the one that took him off. He's like, yeah, we're not even gonna risk it. It's day one of camp. Some like stuff like that happens where maybe you haven't skated on something in a while, or you feel something, and during the season, you're not gonna let that alarm you too much. But if you feel it in day one of camp and you're a month away from regular season play, I mean, Paul Maurice made it make sense. Carter Hagee's on the roster. Carter Verhaeghe's going to be on the top two lines. Like, we don't have to risk Carter Verhaeghe bag skating in a day one of training camp, whereas, a bubble guy might not say he has tightness somewhere because he needs to make the team. So, we'll hear a little bit more about what happens to Carter Verhaeghe tomorrow. He might be on the ice. He might not be on the ice. He might, be precautionary kept off and just does dry land training stuff. But didn't look serious. No medical updates, so we can't really look too much further into that. But we'll keep you updated on if he's on the ice tomorrow.
One more fun update here. Ryan Lomberg was also absent from training camp today because of the birth of his daughter. So congratulations to Ryan Lomberg.
Yeah, and Paul Maurice said if there's one guy that can miss a day training camp on the green line, it's Ryan Lomberg because of how good of shape he's in. So congratulations to the Lombergs. And we're going to transition into our next topic. Colby, let's bring up you can bring up the next topic.
Yeah, so how about let's just talk about one of the more underrated storylines here, which is looking at who can crack into that top 9 potentially, because I mean, we went over some of the forwards they brought in, but when you look at the way the Panthers can structure that bottom line and that third line there is one spot a guy could crack in, and that's on that third line next to Anton Lundell and Sam Reinhart there. And during camp, they did roll some pretty interesting line rushes, albeit they shouldn't be overreacted to. They were in a blender. So really, they tried about just about everything, but some of the more common line rushes had Grigory Denisenko next to Sasha Barkov and Evan Rodriguez, and you also had Mackie Samoskevich doing a lot of work next to Anton Lundell. And watching Samoskevich in particular during camp, he looks just as good as he did during Dev Camp, where he was much faster than everyone else and more dominant than everyone else. Of course, it's scaled back because he's playing on the same ice as Sasha Barkov now, but his speed still jumps out, and he's still winning puck battles and making plays as well. So should be an interesting battle to take a look at.
Yeah, Samoskevich, during Dev Camp and during rookie camp, he far and away looked like the best player. So we said, okay, we know he's going to be the best player here. Let's see what happens when he gets the main camp and then the preseason. He didn't look out of place today. Day one, did not look out of place, was skating with the white jerseys, which is predominantly made up of the pro roster guys. He looked good. As you said, he's taking line rushes of some of the big boys. Now, Colby brought up that there's going to be a roster spot in the top 9 available. No Anthony Duclair here anymore. This is what the top 9 is going to look like. We're going to definitely have, obviously, Barkov, Verhaeghe, Evan Rodriguez, which is the new pickup. You're going to have Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk. You're probably going to see Nick Cousins there just the way that he played during the playoffs. You would imagine him as the middle 6 guy, so either in the second or third line. Now, they can drop him back to the fourth because during the regular season, he did play a lot of third and fourth line minutes. But for now, I'm going to have him up there. You're going to have Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen, and those guys are obviously middle 6 guys to top 9 guys. That's where the extra spots open. So we mentioned Denisenko, talked about Samoskevich. In terms of guys other than them that really jumped out to me. Oh, wait. I thought I wrote him down. Sam Reinhart's there too.
Yeah, Nick Cousins is kind of the guy that is competing for his spot, which he did do a decent job during the playoffs on that line with Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett. And he could keep it, but he very well could fall back to the fourth line, and you can see another guy come out as a scratch, and then you have one of the 2 young guys jump in there, which Nick Cousins is fully capable of playing on that second line, but really you'd want to give one of these younger guys with a plus skill, a higher ceiling. I'm sorry, more opportunity there, and it could prove to be pretty helpful.
Now, the good thing with the Panthers is Anton Lundell is not a third line center. He's more serviceable than some third line centers in the NHL. So he is more of a skilled player than you see on some third lines in the NHL. So if you had to put now, I don't think they'd put a rookie with Anton Lundell unless there's something really clicking. But he's come into his third year. That is an option too. So they do have a luxury in that. But as Colby mentioned, they're definitely not gonna bury a skilled guy on the fourth line because they brought in True, they brought in Stentlin, they brought in other guys that can compete around the 10 to 13, 10 to 14 roster spot. So that bottom line is going to be made up of what they brought in, probably more size, a little bit more veteran stuff. And we didn't even mention Ryan Lombard.
Yeah, Ryan Lombard, I think, could be a lock for that fourth line spot.
Yeah, it's like he
has
played
played
every
on
single
line.
game in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, he has played on a line with Anton Lundell before,
And he wasn't
in
bad
spurts, and he had that one really good stretch back in the President's Trophy winning season where he had like 5 goals in 3 games. But I'm not sure if that's something he can consistently do. So that's why I kind of have him pegged as a shoe-in for that fourth line spot, and then it would be something along the lines of him with Cousins and either Lorentz or Stenland. And then you have one of the younger guys slide into the top 9 if the Panthers do decide to go that route and have one of these guys be a scratch. But we'll see.
And it's a luxury that the Panthers are looking at this right now because there was times last season it's like, oh, we might have to play Eric Stahl top 6 center minutes because of the injuries and illnesses and all the other random stuff that they were getting last year. I mean, Eric Stahl, who isn't with the team this season, came in on a PTO and they signed him once they were able to sign him a little bit later into the season. So I think they're going to, at least the way the contracts work, Denisenko's on a one-way contract. So I think they're gonna they want him to be on that pro team, and Samoskevich is gonna have his work cut out for him if he wants to make the opening night roster and play. That's just my honest opinion. He has a lot of skill, but as we just went through this top 9, it's if I'm trying to pencil in a guy that's never played in an NHL game, he's gonna have to put in and show out a lot in the preseason for them to maybe bubble some of these other guys that they brought in to play those minutes in the offseason.
Yeah, of course. They do have a lot of options to go with here, and you could see Nick Cousins play up, or you could even see Ryan Lombard get a chance to play up to start the season and see if they can boost his confidence. But right now, Florida's in a good spot, and also to remember on Denisenko's part, if he doesn't make the roster entirely, he has to go through waivers too. So that is something to keep in mind when structuring the roster. And if you're willing to let go of a guy you drafted in the first round in 2018, that
and it's a guy that they gave really shown last season.
Points wise, I think maybe they go that route, but that is one reason why I think Mackie Samoskevich has a bit of an outside chance rather than a shoe-in chance because they do have some guys that need to go through waivers that you don't necessarily want to lose. So we'll see how things shake out. But I mean, as Bill Zito has said when talking about any of these roster battles, whoever the best player is going to play, or whoever the best player is, they're going to play. So I don't think waivers are too big of a concern.
And when we talk to Zito, they're very focused in on Charlotte. They signed these center. They have a assistant general manager in Charlotte. The team in Charlotte's going to be good. They're really honing in on the development there. So if Mackie goes to Charlotte, well, he's going to be playing good minutes with the Checkers. So it's not end all be all if he doesn't make the opening night roster. And there is going to be injuries throughout the season. There are going to be guys that get moved. You can
There are
always
a lot of guys that the Panthers do like that are in Charlotte, and some guys that really have shined throughout development camp and even training camp here. Like, they got a lot of guys in the back end, like Johnny Ludwig, who has dealt with a lot of injuries the last couple of years, but that's a guy who's really high on Zito's radar. Um, he's a big physical guy back there, and he does a good job when healthy, but he just has to stay healthy. And he's a guy that could compete for a roster spot someday. And then you also got a guy like Santu Kinnunen. You have Kale Silin, and they brought in Uvis Belinskis. So you have a whole bunch of defensemen back there who can play, and some forwards as well, like Ryan McAllister they brought in from college, and a really big standout between development camp and even training camp today was Wilmer Skoog as well. He had a really good season with Boston College, signed a deal with the Charlotte Checkers, and he looks like he can compete.
Yep, and Justin Sordos, another name that will be in Charlotte and played in Charlotte. That's another guy that I thought played really good in the dev camp. We're gonna wrap up. Just wanted to quickly mention there's one guy on the Panthers training camp roster that's there on a PTO. That is Brett Ritchie. Spent time with Calgary and Arizona last year. It's gonna be a little hard to just digest everything off the first day. So we'll see a little bit more how he performs throughout the next couple days in camp going into the preseason. But yeah, day one's over. We still got a couple more days. Heading into Sunday is the last day before they get into a doubleheader on Monday of a split squad preseason game against the Nashville Predators. Paul Maurice said all the available veterans will play. So they're not going to sit the Barkovs and the Tkachuk's if they are healthy. So if you're going to the game, you're going to see all the big boys play.
And we'll have a lot to talk about when we come back next Wednesday at 8:30. That will be, or 8:15, sorry. That will be our new schedule going forward here. We're going to be here Wednesdays at 8:15, bringing you everything that has to do with the Florida Panthers. And that includes a pretty big week of training camp coming up here, and that doubleheader on Monday.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to the first show of the Fifth Line 5R show, Florida Panthers training camp talk. I'm Alex Baumner with Colby Guy, our boy Manny in the back, producing everything. Make sure you hit the follow button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the post notifications so you get updated with every single one of the streams here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Follow the show on Twitter at Fifth Line 5R. We'll see you guys next Wednesday, where we'll talk more about the preseason, training camp, and roster cuts here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.